she, her, and hers. We have some, there will be one announcement. Jerry Thornton has an announcement, and the rest of the announcements you can find in the newsletter and the order of service in the weekly. I'll give it to Jerry.
Thank you, Judy. Dave Goforth and I are nominally the Buildings and Grounds Committee for this church, and we've been remiss this spring in inviting you all to help us. So I'm inviting you all to come help us do some buildings and ground maintenance on Wednesday, May 17th, and Wednesday, May 24th, starting, say, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And assuming we're not having thunderstorms or whatever, we can do quite a bit of work with tidying up our flower beds and the property. So if you're inclined to do some outdoor work, if you want to join us, come around on Wednesday afternoon, May 17th and May 24th. And while I'm here, I don't know who did the doodle poll. Maybe you know we're supposed to have a green sanctuary planning meeting on Monday, May 22nd at 6 o'clock here. So
It'll be by Zoom.
By Zoom?
I will not be in the States.
Oh, okay. It's a Zoom meeting. So if you're interested in the reformulation of a green sanctuary committee for this church, come to me or Carol after the service, let us know, and we'll try to get you on a Zoom meeting at 6 o'clock on May 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. That's all important stuff. I guess there are no more announcements from anybody, so we're going to have a really wonderful service this morning. Carol's going to be talking about spring cleaning and giving us, I'm sure, a fresh outlook on cleaning up and cleaning out. So we're going to have a gathering song. Will be number 16 in the gray hymn. Oh, and we're going to sing it twice.
I'm the Reverend Carol Bodeau. I'm privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. As Judy has mentioned, today we're going to be talking about spring cleaning. We're going to be talking about it in a slightly different way. So, one of the things I was just noticing, that this is going to tie into our idea of spring cleaning, what I was just noticing is when we sing, we look at our hymnals and not at each other. Some of you have suggested that we keep our seating in this format here in the room. There's two reasons for that. One is that you all can see each other. We all are in a little bit more level playing field here. That's one part of it. Another part of it is that for the people who are visiting us and with us virtually, they actually get to see something other than all your backs, right? Then actually the people who are with us virtually get to see part of their community. So when I'm going to be talking about cleaning, I'm going to be talking about changing habits, changing patterns, making space. So one of the things that we are doing with this new arrangement is making a new space. I've said to a few people that partly what we're doing here is we're taking human personalities off of the high level, but leaving the chalice up high. So when we light our chalice in a minute, it'll be our values that are elevated rather than an individual personality or a hierarchy. We're leveling that out. As I invite the bowl to sound this morning, I'm going to invite you to do something radical, which is look at each other. One of the most difficult habits for humans to change is making eye contact. It makes us squirm a little bit. So I'm going to invite you in this arrangement, as the bowl sounds, which is meant to call us into our center, to also let the bowl call us into our circle of community. So I invite you, as the bowl sings to us this morning, to notice yourself, but also allow yourself, if you feel ready to do that, to make eye contact, to look around the room, and to recognize that we are always in relationship at all times. We are always in relationship, whether we are acknowledging it or not. So the bowl will sing, and we will have a moment to come together fully in this circle. To be with us virtually, I want everyone to turn. This is going to feel a little strange to you. Turn and look that way. I love it. Wave. We may not be able to see you fully, but we see you and we acknowledge each other with us. Welcome to all of you this morning. Sherry is going to be like the chalice for us, and I have some words for us. Old rubbish, old letters, old clothes, old objects that one does not want to throw away. However, nature has understood that every year she must change her leaves, her flowers, her fruit, and her vegetables, and make manure out of the mementos of her year. That was said by Jules Bernard. So, I'm going to ask Judy to do me a favor. Would you light our 2 community candles for me, please? We have these 2 candles on the side of our chalice to acknowledge the community. And there has been an awful lot that has needed our attention, and even more with every passing day. Today, as we light our community candles, I'd like us all to hold in our minds and hearts those who were killed and injured yesterday in Texas, in the shooting at the mall in Texas. Earlier this week at an office in Atlanta. And of course the shooting that happened with the family a week ago. We light the candles not because we think that's enough, We light the candles to remind us to keep that alive in our hearts. So, one of the things we make space for when we let go of the old is space to have bigger hearts, to be more brave, and to take more action in the world when the world is hurting. So, today I just want to invite us to remember that we can be agents of healing in the world. In a few weeks, on June 18th, I believe it is, the Welcoming Congregation is going to be doing a service. Our team, which is sort of our social justice arm here at West Side, is going to be doing a service on a whole bunch of legislative updates. We're going to be talking about legislative things that are happening on a whole bunch of different issues. It's meant to be an educational, informative service talking about different things that are happening, and it'll be followed by our June potluck, where we'll have a chance to talk about those issues and how we as a community feel we are called to respond to certain issues in our world and in our community. So even as we talk about this spring cleaning and making space in a kind of lighthearted way, let's remember that we are doing that in order to give ourselves the space to show up more fully for things that really, truly matter. One of the things we do here at Westside to make a difference in the world is we share our resources with the larger community. In a moment, we're going to be taking an offering that supports this congregation, but it also supports the larger community through partners in our community. Currently, we are supporting the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Network, which is part of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is an organization that allows people who aren't in a congregational setting to be part of Unitarian Universalism. And particularly, it serves individuals who are incarcerated and who are still wanting to be part of religious and spiritual community. On the 28th of this month, Elizabeth Corbett is going to be doing her service, telling us more about that program. So this is one of the ways we can continue to be active in the world, carrying our values out and making a difference in our larger community. So the offering will now be gratefully accepted. A portion of the undesignated funds will go to that Worthy Now Prison Ministry Network. Thank you, Sandra. Could we just have a little round of applause for Sandra? It's always kind of hidden over behind the piano, but is such an essential part of everything we do here on Sunday mornings. We're grateful for her. So, okay, it's spring. It's been a little bit of a chilly spring. It hasn't been quite as warm this year as it was last year at this time of year, so I don't know how motivated anybody's been yet for their spring cleaning. I've personally been pretty motivated. But I had an interesting conversation recently about cleaning, clearing, and making space that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to tell you a story about that. A few weeks ago, some of you know, I took a trip out to the West Coast to visit my son who lives in California and a good friend who lives in Oregon. And so I spent a little over a week out there, and it was the first time I'd taken a trip by airplane since COVID. Okay, so it was the first time I kind of put myself in that kind of a setting in a long time. And I wouldn't say that I was nervous, but it was a little bit strange to be back in those kinds of crowded situations. Airport security lines. And you know, it is a little bit, think about this, it's a little bit strange to be squeezed into a metal tube with hundreds of other people. Like, that's a bizarre thing that we do. We're used to it, but it's a little bizarre. So that was a little strange, and I have personally gotten kind of comfortable with this, like, spaciousness that we have created over the next few years. So it did feel a little bit tight and a little bit close, but I am a people person. Shocking, surprise. I am a people person, so I was pretty comfortable being back in that kind of close contact with humanity. On the flight home, you know how when you're on a flight that's a long day, usually with a group of people, it's a group of people you're with for the day, right? Often you spend a whole day with a group of some number of strangers who you don't really know them, but you do have this sort of weird kinship with them, right? I'll tell you what will really teach you about the kinship with those people is if the plane gets caught in a blizzard and you're stuck in an airport with them for a few days. That will teach you about your kinship with them. That didn't happen, but on this particular flight, and it was a two-leg flight, there were two sections to the flight, so a significant number of people who started were on both portions of that flight. And in the airport, at the beginning before the first flight, there was a young man that I noticed. He stood out. He seemed a little awkward. He seemed uncomfortable, anxious. He was kind of talking to people and going up to the counter and asking for help. And he just seemed really uncomfortable. It was an interesting day that developed around him where I got to understand that some very basic things about humanness. I was remembering as this day progressed how much all of us need human connection. How much we need to actually make those connections even when we kind of like our distance. So this young man, you know, I noticed him in the airport before the first flight, and then the first flight happened, and then in between the first and the second flight, same thing. He seemed very uncomfortable and awkward and out of place. He you know, I couldn't really tell what was going on with him, but it was clear that he didn't feel quite like at home in this environment. And other people were clearly noticing that he stood out, and some seemed to be wanting to be helpful and others wanting to avoid him. And so, you know, I happened to be one of the first people to board that second flight. And I knew it was going to be a pretty full flight. I knew it was a completely full flight, and there was an empty seat next to me. And people got on the plane, and got on the plane, and got on the plane. And we were down pretty much to the end, and I still had an empty seat. And then this young man started coming down the center aisle, and I thought, he's going to be my companion for the rest of this flight. And it turned out that he was indeed sitting next to me. And he struck up a conversation right away and told me that he was quite frightened of flying, quite scared, hadn't done it very much, was quite nervous. He was clearly not someone you would describe as cosmopolitan. He was very respectful and kind and good-hearted. And we chatted a while. And he warned me, he said, I might get really scared. Now, one of the effects of climate weirdness that we're experiencing is turbulence. I don't know if you guys have heard the studies about this, but turbulence is increasing dramatically on domestic flights because of the way the winds are changing and the air currents are changing. So we had a really bumpy takeoff. Not to mention that we were leaving in the middle of a snowstorm. The airport we were leaving was having snow. So this young man, I knew that he was nervous, and I reassured him that as we took off, I could tell that he was really nervous. So I just took his hand, and I just held his hand and said to him, it's all right, I'm right here, you're going to be okay. And he just looked at me with this gratitude in his face and said, thank you so much. And we got in the air and things settled down and we watched our movies, and then we had another little conversation at one point as we began to approach landing. And he explained to me that he had been on the West Coast at a treatment center where he was recovering from addiction. And he explained to me that he was quite nervous because even as we were preparing to land, he was receiving messages from friends who wanted him to go get high as soon as he landed. And he said to me that he was worried because he didn't want to be with those friends, and he valued his sobriety, but he was scared that if he let go of those friends, he would be all alone. And he didn't know what to do about that. He was so afraid that he would be completely alone if he let go of the people that he knew, even though he knew they were toxic for him. And I looked at him and I said, you know, sometimes you have to let go of the bad in order to make space for the good. Sometimes you have to trust that when you let the people and things that are hurting you go, there might be a little bit of empty time first, but into that empty space, new things, good things are going to come. But you'll have to be brave during that time in the middle. You can't expect new healthy people and new healthy experiences if you're still putting time and energy into the things that are hurting you. You have to make space. And he said, wow, that's good advice. I had mentioned that I was a minister. He said, you should give a sermon about that. I said, you know what? I promise you that I will. I promise you that I'll give a sermon about that. And I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what happened when he got off that plane. I don't know what he did. But here we are. This time of year is a traditional time for that big once-a-year cleaning, right? In our Western culture, we call spring cleaning the cleaning time. Now, there are other cultures that do that at different times of the year, right? But it is a time to clear out the dust and the debris and the darkness of being shut in our houses in winter, and to prepare for this kind of new life and new time that we have this sense comes with spring and summer. When the warm weather arrives, we are ready to open our windows and air out the closets and get rid of things that aren't serving us any longer. We have this sense of kind of preparing for a fresh new feeling in our homes and lives. But sometimes letting go of the old yucky stuff isn't that easy. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes we really want to hang on to the old stuff, even when we know it isn't good for us. So here's a funny story about one of those objects in my house. Anybody ever buy a futon, like from 20 years ago, the kind that you get the frame and the thing weighs? It's actually not that heavy, but it's so unwieldy as to be ludicrous. It takes 6 people and it's tipping all over. I have one of those. And I'd had it for 22 or 23 years. The frame is gone. It's out in a barn somewhere waiting to be turned into a goat pen or something at the farm. But I can't seem to let go of it. It is currently propped behind my couch in my living room. because it's traveled through 20 years with me, through all these parts of my life, through homes and life changes and careers and relationships. It's been the guest bed for innumerable beloved friends and companions who have spent time with me. I tell myself this. I say to myself that if Tracy, my fiance, and I ever decide we're going to go camping in our market van, in our farmer's market van, which is a big van, then it would make a great camping mattress in the van. And we could take a cross-country trip with it in the, right? You're laughing. Morgan's laughing for a good reason. This is ludicrous. The other problem I have with it is that you can't donate them anywhere. Everything else has gone to Carm or someplace like that. You can't donate them though. Nobody will take a futon mattress. They won't take any mattresses. Nope. So I can't, ethically recycle it. I haven't got the energy yet to put it on, Free Stuff, the Free Stuff app, because I'm scared to download the Free Stuff app, because I don't want to have the Free Stuff app. So I've got all kinds of excuses and reasons for not letting go of this thing. I just don't know how to let go of this big, bulky thing that takes up space and energy. Tracy says to me, if I have to move that thing one more time, okay? So we all have those things that are familiar, that we hang on to, that take up our energy and our space and our time, but we hang on to them, even though we know that maybe if I got rid of the futon, then I would be like, oh, the couch has got to go too. Right? I need a new couch. It's got to go, right? So ask yourself, what is that in your life? What is it in your life? Now, maybe you're one of those people who love to clean closets or reorganize that kitchen drawer. You know, you have that drawer in the kitchen that all the random stuff goes in. My kids and I call it the things that rattle drawer. Right? Everybody has that drawer. Maybe you're one of those people. I have days when I'm one of those people who wants to just clean everything out. Or maybe you're one of those people who just absolutely can't do that and needs to hang on to every newspaper article that you ever found interesting ever. Right? We have times in our lives when we take both of those roles. So you may have heard me talk about Marie Kondo a couple of years back, the KonMari lady who developed this method of sorting and getting rid of stuff that's all about deciding what you're going to keep, books, clothing, household items, based on what brings you joy. And that is different than what brings you comfort or familiarity. It's what brings you that feeling of I'm living my best life. My futon does not make me feel like I'm living my best life. It makes me feel like I'm living my past life. Over and over and over again. Brings me comfort, doesn't really bring me joy. This method takes really literally the metaphor that cleaning out and clearing things out of our spaces makes space in our hearts, in our lives, in our psyches. Now, many cultures do this cleaning or clearing as part of a New Year's ritual. So, for example, there are parts of the Chinese New Year's traditions which involve cleaning everything out, or the Jewish New Year where all the dust and grain from the previous year is cleaned out. But the timing isn't really nearly so important as the basic concept that we all need to stop once in a while and assess those things and make some decisions about what it's time to let go of. So perhaps it is possible to think of this spring cleaning season this year as a jumpstart for making some progress in areas we might feel stuck in. So here are a few ideas for your spring cleaning that you might not yet have thought of. You might go through your phone and delete all the numbers for people you haven't talked to in the last couple of years. How many of us have phone numbers that if we were to literally go through the contact list in our phone, we'd say, oh, wow. I haven't thought about that person in a really long time, okay? How about this one? This is one I'm working on Tracy on. Move the television out of the center of your house and clear out some space for other kinds of activities. What kind of space does the television take up in your world? That might be your computer too. How about this? Take a few weeks off from social media, making space for something else. Hobby, in-person contact with other humans. What if you took a month-long break from Facebook or something like that? Okay, here's another kind of different idea. What if you went through your list of people I should have called or written, mental or written down? What about that list? And you cleared out a couple of days just to do that. What if you cleared your calendar and cleared out the backlog of regrets and unfulfilled communication? Here's a good one for Unitarian Universalists. Quit the group you've been finding drags you down or that you really don't have to spend time with or volunteering anymore. Pick an activity, any activity, and take a break from it. If that's a West Side committee, I support you in that choice. I see those faces. Right? What would it be to clean out space in your calendar to do what you love that's not an obligation? Okay. How about make a list of things? Here's a challenging one. Make a list of things you are ashamed of and regret in your life. Because that's actually taking up space in your heart and in your mind and in your psyche. Those things are actually taking up space. Make a list of them, put them on paper, and then burn it. And give yourself a chance for a little bit of self-forgiveness and self-compassion. Make space for something new to come in by stopping ruminating on the old. And then maybe while you're at it, forgive someone else and clear them out of your emotional household as well. How much space are they taking up? Last but certainly not least, I invite you to contemplate how much energy you spend, how much of your space is taken up by worry. Worry about the planet. Worry about the world. Worry about the government. Worry about your children or your grandchildren or your neighbor's children or grandchildren. All of the children. Worry about everything. There's a fine line between discernment and awareness and worrying. I'll be talking about that more in a few weeks when I talk about worry being a form of praying. So prepare yourselves for that one, because you are notorious for saying they don't pray and also notorious worriers. So ask yourself, what am I worrying about and how much space is that taking up? What if you could clear out worry and replace it with something else? So these are just some things to think about, different ways to think about making space for the new. My airplane companion was right. Sometimes we go back to old patterns and familiar situations, familiar thoughts, familiar activities, familiar behaviors, particularly our mental behaviors, especially when we're not really paying attention, the ones that just live in our heads all the time. We go back to them because we're afraid that without them, something bad will happen or something worse will happen. We'll be alone. We'll lose control. The world will come crashing down. We may feel this way unconsciously about familiar complaints and grievances that we have against ourselves and others. We can take up an awful lot of space with thinking negative thoughts about the world we live in. So last weekend, here was one of my big spring cleaning things. I didn't get rid of the futon yet. More on that soon. But last weekend, I took a broom and a bucket of soapy water, and I went outside and I scrubbed the spots on the side of the vinyl siding of the house where the algae had started to take over. It's been there for 5 years. Thank you, Judy. Bad. But now why? I've been avoiding this task for a really long time, and why? Here's why. Because of the stories I was telling myself in my head about it. Oh, I'll be allergic to it, it'll make me wheeze. Oh, it'll require a power washer. It's going to be really hard to get off that vinyl side. It's going to take a lot of money. That's going to take forever. Oh, we'll get to it eventually. It's not that blah, 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 blah. And then I took some organic 7th generation dish soap and I squirted it in a bucket with a little water, and it took me 25 minutes. And that was that. Sometimes it's that easy. And that metaphor wasn't lost on me as I did it. Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about making space and clearing things out are just flat out not true. And the story keeps us from doing things that we just need to just try it and see what happens. So this spring, if you happen to scrub out your refrigerator, or you sweep cobwebs in the corner, you do your window cleaning, or have Mike Fisher come clean your windows. Yay, Mike Fisher's coming! That's an auction item for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Spring window cleaning is a big auction item, right? When that's happening, I invite you to think about some of the things you might do to clean out and make space in your mind, your heart. Perhaps you might discover underneath all the stories that we tell ourselves about doing that as our first song, Simple Gifts, tells us, underneath all of that debris and clutter, there's just some basic, simple stuff that can make you feel happy and calm, right? Beneath the regrets and the busyness and the worry and the habits of mind and behavior, there are some basic human needs and some basic human connections. We all long for security and belonging. We all need connection and meaning. And we all hope that we can leave behind our past mistakes and have new possibility, new hope. This is possible for us more if we're able to let go. And let go of the story that it's too dangerous to let go. So I'm wishing for all of us a season of metaphorical spring cleaning, spring clearing, and making new space for those things that are deep and rich and meaningful, some of which are just the absolute simplest things. We're going to sing a closing song that's about the simplest things, home and just space, being something that gives us peace. I'm going to invite you to rise and body your spirit, if you would like, to join in singing our closing song, number 356, Will You Seek in Far Off Places. And I'm going to ask Sandra to play it through once for us, because it's new to us, so we'll be able to hear it once through. It's actually speaking about coming home to the things that are deep in your heart, like Marie Kondo's joy. I'm not going to get rid of the objects and the things from 20 or 30 years ago that are from my children's early childhood that are treasures to me. When I hold them, they bring me deep, rich joy. There are things that we hold on to because they still give us life, because they remind us of who we are deep inside, and because they connect us to the things that we value the most. The trick is in discerning the difference. May we go into this world with a commitment to holding the things that we value and that we treasure and that bring us deep, rich joy and belonging and connection, and being brave enough to let go of those things which no longer serve that purpose. I will extinguish our chalice, but I invite you to go out carrying that light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of a commitment to those deep and rich values. Go in peace and passion.